What's up? What's up? Much peace to all out there, living vividly in this world, trying to find your way through this ingenious maze that we have in front of us. Are you finding yourself motivated with high spirits to become what you wish to be? I hope so. If you're dedicated to the point and motivated past and beyond any thought of negative inference, let it be. Let it be bold. Um, I like to find myself in a path where I can become whichever way that I please and to form paradigms of my own constructiveness and creativeness through my visualization and forming that pathway to form my benefit and create my being. So, according to that logic, I hope a lot of people can be onto that point and find beyond that, because sincerely I do find some compassion as somewhat the way to describe it, the significance of people working a 9 to 5, like, you know, people who get up and are wanting to stay away from work, and people who wish that, they won't have that job. They're not happy with their existence and their being. So I feel passion to that, but it can be prescribed within yourself to find creativity. I wish upon that, but your wish is the most motivation. You have the success, you have the vision beyond any expectations of your doubt and your experience to come through and persevere. Find the pathway, seek the dedication, seek the focus, seek the stream. We're all out here in the world trying to big up to the man. See, we out here all day. What we doing? We're just breathing and goodness. You know what I mean? All day. This is to the brethren out here, man. Life is full of choices. If you understand what I mean, you understand what I mean. And if you understand what I mean, you understand that it's green. And that's the main thing. That's the main thing. Now, it's not all about that. But in my way of being, I find that herbs are the healing of the nations, most undoubtedly. So let me just give a shout out and a big what up to my man Ken in the house, or aka Ken a Dummy, aka Face Plant, known by many names, living on this planet, surviving, finding tranquility in what it is and what he has accomplished. I'm sure he has many wise words for us in his experience of life, but this is what we should seek and respect, and to try and decipher things which will help and that shall not hinder us. Stay away from such travesty and bullshit that people put out there to distract you from nonsense. We must survive. We must continue, like we all must continue to have these, I guess, what you would call necessities and needs of physical and emotional. You know, we need to be hydrated. We need to be have sufficient nutrition for brain power. We also need to speak to people. We need love. we need to find these things. Some people find solace and they can find it within themselves. They don't need society. They could go live in the wilderness for 60 years, for their whole lifetime, and that is their peace and solitude. Some others may find it in a skyrise uh, building in a massive urban metropolis or megatropolis, whatever you would call it, in a certain rat race. That might not be me, but I'd like to understand somebody's perception and perspective of that. Because that's what I believe. I don't think nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We all go through ups and downs. So we've got to try and keep balance and keep level. If you know what I mean. Like, so, it's must duty. I mean, and it's a hard, no, actually, it's not a hard task, really. A lot of people go, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. Well, end of the day, make a priority. What is what? What do you want? Where do you want to go? You know what's going to get you there. And if you wake up day by day and you're like, I'll do it tomorrow, or I can't, I got to do this for this and this. Well, hey, that reality you speak of is probably not going to come to fruition. So take the chance. It's like a measured risk. You got to have that calculated risk. Take the chance. Go for it. And if it doesn't come off, then you learn which one way. You still, at least you tried. You went forth. And you will learn something from that. And I'm sure your next attempt will be better. But hope to succeed in your first effort through thinking before you move. So to have that calculated risk. I'm sure everybody does it on all sorts of levels. You talk like politicians, prime ministers, those sort of think pots and entities, or whatever they're called, think tanks. They think of how to Well, what do they think? They think very assertively for their cause and agenda. They take no nonsense and they put down their formulas, strategies, plans, and stick to it. And that's it. Go for that. So, I mean, and that's just from, I don't know, an impromptu thought of trying to break down and take a look at what they do. I've never seen them in their office or what, but I notice every time they talk on the news or wherever in the public, their spiel seems to be a rhetoric of nonsense and constant just fraudulent emotional speech. Like, there's no sincerity to it. They constantly are speaking down to their opposition, and just, yeah, I really, anyway, get away from them, really. But the problem, I mean, not a problem, but a sad part of truth is they are the, supposed power holders, the ones that can change legislation. Now, I'm sure that's not the real, the power that we would be, to think, to the shakers and movers. They would be the entities financing them behind the scenes. But there's many different levels to this all, so where do you fit and where do you want to be? Are you satisfied with sleeping on the beach, eating coconuts and drinking coconut water, and the occasional fish that may come along? Or do you need to live in a 5-star hotel being catered for? It's a question that I ask. But it's a valid question. I think I would go for A. I could be satisfied with A, coming from my background of Fijian island life, knowing that the coconut is the tree of life. But for saying that, many others that I've come across would not be able to handle such things that I've seen in Australia. They, as I say, come across first world problems, which to me seem quite insufficient issues warranting their screams of endurement of pain and suffering at the fact that their remote control has run out of its battery, or the button is not working on their game controller, or that their new game hasn't come out this week. Think of people in third world nations for a second. Travel is also a great thing, and mind opener, opens your mind in much to the culture and the humanity of mankind being that is on this earth, and it is a great great experience, at least to say. I've been ranting for a while. I'm a man. You got anything to say over there, my brother? Or you just chilling?
Yeah. Well, I can just say one example for myself about my struggle with work. When I was I was going to say when I was working, but I'm going to go back to work at some point. But it was tough. I mean, just the physical grind of a day was tough. Not to mention the psychological bullshit you have to go through with people every day.
Right.
So I would just in the morning I would just kind of project my mind to the end of the day when I'm home. And before you know it, you're there. And what's in between is just washed away, you know?
Wow, that's a very good tip for those that, see, were you just imagining the end of the day, or were you looking at the clock constantly? Said looking to that 5 o'clock, or you weren't even considering the clock. You were just thinking, okay, it's coming to 5. It's going to be 5. It's going to
Yeah.
be the end of the day.
I can't watch the clock. It would
That doesn't help, does it?
No. Makes the day really long.
So what field was that in? I mean, was it a physical labor type thing, or an office job?
Yeah,
More mentally
bricklaying.
straining. Bricklaying, yeah. So that's a very physical. That's one of the highest. Or yeah, that's probably one of the most highly labor.
And I was just thinking about the strange circumstances of my experience in the trade and some of the people that I worked with. I mean, I don't want to sound doom and gloom. I'm just going to say what happened to some of the people that I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
Of the people that I worked with, and knew, they were my friends.
Right.
Two guys hung themselves.
Damn. Yeah.
Two guys died in the house fires. One
That's,
guy one guy killed his friend and hid his body in the basement for 2 weeks.
oh. So,
Yeah, two guys fell
blessings
off
to
a
that.
building and died. Another guy cut his wrists and throat, apparently.
This is all from the same like bricklaying team, is it?
Yeah, all guys I worked with.
Oh.
I worked with
Whoa.
different companies. Yeah, I'm in a union.
Okay.
So, and like I have off time in the winter because it's cold, right? So there's not a lot of work.
Hmm.
So,
Okay. I
I'd
mean,
be so,
but you've just named off like a good handful of people when who passed away from really tragic circumstances, and some uh, that's quite like unknowing to me, really. You know, I don't know
yeah,
how
and
much it had
yeah,
related to the job.
I can't really, I still can't really believe it myself, thinking back that all these guys, I worked with them, and like, for instance, we would go out of town for a job. It would be
Yeah.
like through the union. We'd go out of town on a job. It would be like a 2 week job or something. So if I was going out of town, for instance, it would be a different crew or a different company, but we're all in the same union, so we all know
Mhm.
each other and work with each other
Yep.
with different companies and on different jobs.
Okay. Yeah, I get it.
And yeah, just these guys passing away under strange circumstances.
Really, yeah. I mean, I think it's. I can see it's a lot. It's hit even you thinking of it, just hitting you hard. Like, I mean, to think of I definitely give much blessings to all those people that you mentioned, man, and as much power to their spirit as I can, and I send it, and especially to the gentleman that was not found for 2 weeks, and that whole situation. If he was
The
left
guy
there,
who the killer, and that's the killer was the guy that I worked with,
mm,
and I heard
was
this, and it was a couple years after I had worked with him, I think, and I just heard this story on the news, and I heard the guy's name, and I'm thinking, is that the guy that I worked with?
wow,
So I went on Google Maps on Street View to see the place where the incident happened, and then I'm looking around on Street View, and I see his van, and I just go, oh, it was him.
wow.
Yeah, this guy that I worked with.
Now, so were you aware of the circumstance of the relationship of those two? Did you know that man prior
I did
to
not
to
know the guy
no?
who died, but apparently it was his really good friend. And this guy that I worked with, he drank a lot, and apparently he was struggling financially and with the relationship, and his girlfriend left him and took his kid too, I think. And the fella that died apparently went over to his place, to help him out or something, console him or support him. And I don't know, he was probably drunk and lost his temper and killed the guy and hid his body in his basement for. And this was at Christmas time a few years ago. Yeah, and he the guy was missing. The guy was a missing person for, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks after Christmas. This guy was missing, and then they found the guy's body in this guy's basement that I worked with. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a really brutal business, especially if you're not hooked up, if you're not the boss's son or something, and if
right.
you're yeah, you can have a really hard time.
I think yeah, a lot of people would say that, and they've gone through such experience of it's not what you know, it's who you know. You know, so like, as you just said about if you're not the boss's son or don't have the connections, it might be quite
Yeah,
hard to gain what's that to get promotions and such not. So that's pretty much warranted to a lot of people not being able to find that motivation to try and keep going. If they feel they're never going to get a step up, then they're always going to get stepped on, shat on, then hey, it's pretty sad. But
Hey, peace to the gods. What's up? How y'all doing
absolutely,
today?
much
peace,
peace to
God
God,
body.
buddy.
All right, I'm just listening in right now. I don't pretty much know what you all guys were talking about, but I'm just here for the support and giving my feedback.
That's right,
Just
brother.
starting up,
Much appreciated.
just starting up.
Yeah, I just much appreciated. Just open this up, just to you don't have to get like basically for if people want to have their voice heard, get their opinions off. We just talking about the harsh, what people go through in life and the experiences and what drives them to do what, and how unfortunately it can drive people over the edge, which is and they lose their life in some circumstances. But
So this
on
is
the
Yeah,
okay.
and
I got
it's
a
really
question then.
it's a really
You got a
unhealthy.
question?
Yeah,
My question was, how do you beat the okay, so how do we beat out the the economic factors that's like affecting us every day? Because remember we was having this conversation, about credit and stuff yesterday and things like that. So how do you take yourself out that matrix, that everyday matrix, and just be like, just not, don't be so honored about money and things like that, and just enjoy, the nature and life around you. Take
yeah,
yourself away from that.
I think even at the beginning of the sort of the stream, but we will get. I was mentioning a lot to that about how people can like myself, my perception of getting through life is through my creative ability. I've done with musicians and just doing the street hustle and not going for the 9 to 5 job and being in that syndrome of some people who unfortunately have to wake up and they don't like the position they're in and they don't like their job and they're struggling and they got to keep going for it. So I don't have the answer,
I
and
think
that's what we're getting at.
I
I mean,
think you
is that
really have to separate. You have to separate your work life from your everything else. Like for years and years, uh, when I was at work, it was like almost every day go to the bar and get pissed right after work.
And that's why I asked you that. That's why I asked that question, because I found myself fighting with this every day. Like, you could be making a good amount of money, but money ain't, it ain't really shit. It could, it could like put a bandage over the wound, but it can never fully heal the wound of, your happiness. So that's why I pretty much asked that question.
Yeah,
But yeah, you was going right into it.
it's not. it's not so much how much money you make, but what you do with it. You know, if
Right.
like any
Oh, but what
person,
would satisfy you? Right?
most people, the more money they make, the more money they spend. So
He
it's just,
and Son Ray just told me yesterday, like we need to stop like basically spending more than how much we make, living outside our means.
yeah, this credit thing. And, you know, you can get anything you want with credit if you have a job, right? And
Yeah.
that's the hook to keep you hooked in there,
Yeah. I mean, that's
making
kind
you
of how
think
we
you
were
need.
talking yesterday. That was the narrative. Like, that's how I find. That's my personal perspective. I live within my means, and as you just say, it doesn't mean that you could stay to live poor. You always got to strive to the next place. You do what you do to gain it, and you sacrifice these little things over time, and then you've got your stack, and then you can afford what you want, do what you live. Whereas this whole system of credit and work is I don't know, like how I wouldn't. You could describe it in many ways, but yeah, it's something that's like a rolling. What do they call it? A ball of rolling moss or something. It just keeps gathering. It's got to keep its momentum going. So and it exists on itself. This credit, like
Okay,
to
okay.
have a job, to have a home. But I mean, I could see maybe I can't speak on too much of that because I've never had a mortgage either. So or to save up that much money to get to
I
that
think
standard.
I think one of the reasons is that they always put the image of like trying to be the head or the boss or something, and I think you need to work on like you ain't gotta want to be the boss of everything to enjoy your life here on this plane. Like so,
That's right. You don't have to be the boss. Why would you? Yeah, man. I mean, some people do think like that. They want to, as their perception is to like be overpowered. Maybe that's insecurity and inferiority inside of them that they want to always control and have control over the situation or
That
give
is part of it, yeah.
commands to people.
And
so oh,
like
go ahead, bro.
in my job, like I'm a bricklayer, and sometimes I was a foreman running jobs, so I would have to when the work slowed down, I would have to decide who was going to be laid off, and I just hated that. But another guy, he would use that as power to control people, threaten them, do this and do that, or you're going to be the first laid off, kind of thing. And I just wasn't into that power trip.
Mm.
I
But
was thinking, is
sadly,
that like a psychological like what pushes us for power? Is that contagious or like what the hell? Or
because yeah, it's right. Because
Yeah,
sadly, that is part of life. It's a big part of life that will exist. That power trip. People will want to get that edge.
yeah, it's the society and the media and education, everything, telling us that there has to be a winner and a loser.
right? Cause
Right.
But
what's so funny about it, bro? It's like so you know how like there were kings and like African kings, there were European, kings and things like that. When I look back on it, I'd be like, everybody wasn't a king, so like
Mm.
everybody don't really have to try to get to that point. You can enjoy your life of your everyday living, what you find in life that's enjoying to you, your hobbies, artistic or whatever the case may be.
That's right. Majority of people that have had an existence on this earth did not live as royalty.
Yeah, like
That,
that's what's so crazy. And people, when we go to our history, they go straight for the divine, the king, the kingship and stuff like that. I'd be like, they don't never talk about, the lower class and what everybody else was doing.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and that's another point to go to what Ken was just saying, that like they want us to be in a mindset of that we have to win. We always have to be there, but because and even that is shown in the state of these like politicians. You always see one side opposing another, you know, and they just constantly talk uh, like uh, talk what's the word, you know, down upon each other. Like everything that every word that seems to come out of their mouth is like a um, putting their opposition down. So, and all that's, you know, from a youth, from a primary school child, that's what we see. Some people are taught all that sort of stuff, you know, and just speak
Yeah.
politically. So, you know,
And
that's a huge driver.
even within my job, I mean, you're played by the competition thing. You know, every day on the job is a competition in this trade. So you're going to work and you're thinking, you're planning, well, how am I going to lay more bricks than the other guy today? You know, and it's like a race, and it really is a race, and that's what how the boss plays it. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
if he gets guys racing, competing with each other, he makes a little more money,
yeah.
And
I
and
mean, that can be
everybody's
broken. Yeah.
like
Broken
everybody's
in
locked.
different ways, I think.
like
Like,
just
I
like
mean,
how you know how to lay bricks, bro. I look at that like that is it's so much power in that. And people don't understand that. Like simple things is knowing you could probably you probably can lay out a blueprint to build a whole city if you know how to lay bricks.
Sure.
That's man, people don't understand the power in some of the knowledge, like basically like and they didn't got us far away from like learning how to, simple shit as such as laying bricks. Well, I know that's not simple, but I would say the standard shit you should every child should learn as they get
mm,
older. But
Yeah. But we go to school and it's mostly bullshit what you learn in school. There's no practical application to it whatsoever. So when you do go out into the workforce, you have to learn the math, or whatever you need to learn, people skills and whatever that they don't even touch on in school. School's all language arts and false history, and yeah.
I wish school would have been like more, more realistic with us. Like they could at least been like, okay, 80% of you are going to be workers. Maybe 5% of you going to be the bosses. Things like that. Get us prepared so because when I first graduated, I didn't know what to think. I was fucking like, it was like a whole new world for me. I didn't know what to do. Like, and then you go to college. I've been to college, and the whole time you're learning and just like you're learning, but you're struggling. You don't have any money if you don't have a means of making money. And then you're
yep,
digging yourself deep into debt. Like,
that's right. Very,
yeah,
very, that's spot on, man. And I heard Dame Dash say similar things to that. You know, like that. Why are we taught those sort of skills in school? Like we're taught a specific topic, and then how to pay that debt off. You know, to go to
yeah.
work and then pay that debt off is crazy. Why aren't we taught skills of how to make money and get through life? You know, and then create generational wealth and such things. We're creating generational debt, even.
Because we are livestock to the powers. In
Can
school
you
we're
repeat that?
livestock.
I ain't hear you, bro.
Yeah, we're livestock.
Oh, livestock. Oh, you saying we're livestock to the powers?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's real shit. That yeah, that's very real. I just be like, if you could believe in the creator, how could you like want to like play with lives like that? Like
power.
Yeah. I see it's like they take God out, they take the creator out the aspect and they put themselves in the place of the creator.
So wait, say that. So say what you said. How can people, like,
Like do
if they believe in the creator, like, play with
if you
people's
could,
lives?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the yeah, that was basically like the question.
And they, yeah, totally. They, as you just said, they take the creator out of the situation and put themselves there, and seems, I mean, what they deem best and what will fit, you know, that's
Yeah,
gonna suit.
Yeah, it's like they're in between us and the creator in this matrix we live in. So that in that way they separate us, our consciousness, from the creator, and just get into the mindset of competition.
because I was thinking like, you know how a lot like well I do it too. I say we are the creator's imagination living out a human experience and things like that. But you know, people go around saying they are God and things like that. So if you going around saying I am God and they get into the wrong mind, then you know, this is what happens. They feel like they God, they feel like they almighty and powerful. They just gonna do what they want when they time with they time on this earth.
It's kind of like you have to, almost like you have to separate yourself from yourself to perform in that, matrix. So you can keep, perform in that economy or whatever. It's like you're not allowed to be yourself if you stop and think about it.
And it's sad, bro. It took me to the age of 25 where I'm just like, I ain't fully out the matrix, but I said I'm gonna be who I am. I don't give a fuck what nobody think about me, and I'm gonna save this money and try to find my way out, or basically play the matrix how it's supposed to be played and get up out of here and give me a little piece of land where I can just be like, all right, this man, I got my little house and things like that. I'm okay with that. Cause I'm like, we at the point of a matrix where you just gotta find your piece.
Yeah, you can't be in competition. You can't go try to buy a nicer, your bike to do it for yourself. You can't go and buy a car, just a nicer car than everybody else. Just do it practical, just for what you need it for, and that's it. Forget about how it looks to anybody else. You know who you are. You don't need to define yourself by what other people see.
Yeah, that's right. I think. I mean, yeah, just be satisfied in, what you're aesthetically pleased with, and what makes you feel right. But yeah, I think because you've always got to realize that there's going to be somebody who is, in every sense, bigger and better or richer or, wealthier, as the saying goes.
And there's
So,
always somebody that wants to take you down. Always.
true.
You just have to figure out who those people are and avoid them. Right? Don't try to prove anything to
Yeah, no,
anybody.
no, that's right. I think so. Link with like-minded folk too, because when you were saying that, like, You know, you should not try to, outdo your others and just do for yourself and things like that. I do think to the point of that a community is required. You need a group of friends. Like I'm quite a what's the word? Like I've always kind of done things on my own on the solid things, but um, you need a group of friends, and you need like just not many. You just need just a handful of people you can trust, and that you're gonna positively progress with. You know, I think so. It's pretty much it would be considered in quite a necessity, not a necessity, but a major part of life. I believe. But they need to be productive. You can't just be stagnant with your friends, trying to get things off your friends, party with your friends and such like that. Because I remember being, quite as in my high school years, and always hanging out with the friends. We were partying up, doing stuff, smoking up, doing this thing, girls drinking and whatnot. But then 4 or 5 years of that, by the time I got to 19, I realized I was like, hey man, like we haven't even saved a cent. We've spent so much money. We're just trying to see like who had money to go buy drinks, who had money to go buy a bag, and all these things like that. And I was like, well, I'm still going to be your friends with you guys forever. Like, we're mates, but I'm going to go and just try and, get something and do something with it, eh? So from that point at 19, I just kind of may have been the wrong way to do it, but I just went and started doing the hustle straight up and just like stacking, saving, stacking, not spending it, just stacking. And then, after a year or two, and then 3 years into that, I was doing that, making like 4 figure a week easy. And then like, it's, it's like, I got into a band and I started playing music professionally. Um, so it was kind of my my parents were wanting me to go to university and do all that sort of things like that and try and get my way through life in the educational normal 9 to 5 way, and that kind of never happened. But yeah, and so like insane. Then back to that point, I still would say that you need like a lot of people have like hundreds and thousands of friends now on their social media and whatnot, but that's like, I think that's crazy because obviously those people wouldn't have a clue as to how that person really is, and so people you could trust, that you really only fit on your hand. You could, there'd be about 5 or 10 people that well, this is from my perspective, that I would consider, not even, I don't, consider really, really, you trust everything. You trust your pretty much your life with them. But I get,
Yeah,
yeah. And in saying
and
that though, you've always got to make sure you're looking out for your concerns too. You got to make sure that because you can't. There's no guarantee, because you always say trust nobody too. So there's no guarantee that these people are going to be looking after your concern. And at times, if they see you slipping, obviously that a good friend will tell you and pick it up. At the same time, like if you've got dirt on your nose, you would want a friend to tell you. Like, if you come home and you realize, oh, I've been out this whole night and I've got a snot on my nose or something. So, you know, uh, that is, a real friend would do. But then at the same time, you can't always count on that.
and it's easy to get locked into that mindset of, you know, making people feel small to make yourself feel tall. A lot of people do that. If they can humiliate you in front of the group, then
Yeah.
it gives
Okay.
them
Yeah.
satisfaction.
Yeah. I can think of a lot, and that maybe comes with youth too. I will like I'm just considering. I can think now of a couple people like that, but I just put it down to like maybe not. I'm sure it could be just part of their persona, but they don't realize. Well, I guess they haven't experienced and seen the broader spectrum of things, and
Those kind of
what.
arrogant people I don't think change. Not from what I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're the same person 20 years ago that they are now. The people that I
Yeah.
can think of offhand.
Unless they were, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of people who were like bullies and shit in high school and shit. I never really fucked with them at all. Like I didn't. I just really disliked it. I seen the worst incident I saw was some child, like a child got thrown into the urinal trough, like into the walls. You know how like when the boys, it was fucking idiots. It's like anyway. I don't understand. They
Yeah,
just did it. They just did it because they could. It was like, yeah, that's great.
and the peer group jumps in, right? Some guy in the peer group starts picking on
Yeah,
some little guy. How often have you seen
yeah, that's
somebody
what it
stop?
was. That's what it
How,
was. That's what it was.
how yeah?
Yeah,
How often have you seen somebody in the group stop someone else in the group from bullying somebody? It doesn't happen. I'm speaking for myself too.
yeah. I mean, that's right, and it's getting kind of even more extreme in the sense now that people stop to record if there's some sort of atrocity going on. If you were to pass by and see someone involved in a violent incident, nowadays people are more likely to be posting this shit to either their camera or social media. It's just a load of shit instead of like stepping in and trying to break up the fight or saying something. They just like stop and record. I noticed that a lot. So. And I mean, to as you're right to yourself. I mean, as you said, I'm guilty, and I've never been guilty to go and record this shit. But like back in my past, when I saw something going on, I didn't, you know, I did at times, but not in all cases. I didn't go and say, "Hey, stop! You shouldn't have done that, man. Why'd you do that?" So, yeah,
Yeah, because then you get targeted sometimes for
yeah,
standing up. Like I've done that on the job where I've seen the guy who's doing absolutely everything, busting his ass and doing everything. And the boss comes on the job and he's looking at the other guy who just fucks the dog all day. He's talking and joking with the guy who doesn't do anything all day, right? So and the boss is looking down at the guy who does everything like he's a piece of shit. It's it boggles my mind that I still see that all the time. And then the boss leaves, and the guy who just stands around and does nothing, he starts running down the guy who's doing everything, or yelling at
yeah.
him.
I would guess that people they take it from what they see. Monkey see, monkey do. In these cases, like they probably saw the boss do it. That's how they did it. They get away, and I think in a lot of cases, it's like, and you see it with parenting how people act in a manner as they were exposed to, and their environment was put around, like, so to many, all sorts of extents, like the way that the parents act is going to come out and have an effect on how the child does, what he says or what she says and what they do. So like, I'm like, so for people to behave in such, like, that they push that, they'll tell their children, you I mean, I'm sure for cases here in Australia, it's widespread, and I'm sure all over the world, like the upper middle class, white people they try to distance themselves from all the supposed lower economic ethnic people, and they tell their children, "Oh, don't hang around with those people. Don't hang, don't hang around with these people. They're not good."
Yeah.
They act polite in their face. They smile in their face and everything, but they can see the whole broad picture of what's going on, and there's like the differentiation in the way people are treated and living standard, but yet they turn a blind eye to it, and they go, because they don't want that, so they keep their child growing in their upper middle class. It's quite saddening.
I've
It's a
worked in the
reality.
woods. I've worked in the woods too, and like some of these towns, I mean, the town is mostly quote unquote white people, and they're just they run down the native people all the time.
Right.
Well,
Isn't that the sort of crux of capitalistic society, like, the company, the corporate mentality. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
I always felt at home with the native people.
Of course.
They weren't putting on airs.
They're very welcoming. They they saw you as a person, as a living being that requires, water, shelter, has a story to tell. I'm sure. I've never, I can understand these things from my experience of Indigenous here and the Fijians' way of life. So, very welcoming people. You can come and eat at any time. If there's food, you gather around, and everybody has some. You have a drink if because they know you're thirsty as you're passing along. It's very true. I mean, was that the case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And could just talk to them casually, without worrying about.
True. Okay. Yeah. The questions are, they're just kind of like, how are you? What's going on? And not like, it's not about the bottom line all the time. Whereabouts was that? What national wild? What would it be? Was it a national park or state forest?
It was in Alberta. It's like this big company called St. Regis Paper. It's a company from New York, and the government basically gives them a huge piece of land, the size of a country. They lease the company this big piece of land for pulp and paper. They cut
the size
trees.
Of what country? How many hectares here?
Oh, I don't know. I would say that piece of land that the government gave that company, just in that one instance, that one company.
Maybe the size of Texas or something, or no? Not quite.
Not that big. Not that big,
okay.
no.
Yeah. New York State or something like that.
Not that big, but still, say a tiny country, but still.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like.
When was that? When was that? Like,
early 80s.
Early 80s. Because I'm thinking of, like, the paper industry is obviously continuing, but the decline would be coming in the way that the technology is growing and people are writing in digital format. But I'm sure, you know, paperback is still going. People in the office and in courts need paperwork, so it's going to be required for a while. But I was just wondering that in the sense, you know, because they gave such a mass amount back then. I wonder what it would be now. It'd still be quite a mass amount, I'm sure, but
yeah, the government just gives over the control of this land to a big company to abuse the land and the people.
yeah.
You know,
And at what rate was those trees being lopped? Do you know?
what rate were they? What?
Being like cut down, lopped. You know,
Well,
like
I don't
what?
know, but
Oh,
it was ugly going out there to see the clear cutting.
mm,
So the company there was rules where they had to replant trees that they cut down.
yeah.
You know, to say
And
it's
so how does that
sustainable.
work? They cut one down, and then do they plant a sort of sprout, a 6-month-old tree, or just a seed? Because it's going to
Just
take about 10, 20 years for this tree to come back, right?
yeah, well, they clear the whole area like it was a certain type of tree to for pulp for
Yeah, mass
paper.
paper production, yes.
So they clear cut the whole area. Like they do one area, a patch,
Yeah,
and then they'd start cutting on another patch somewhere else, and then the patch that where they cut down, they would reforest with a little like little saplings like the size of this pencil.
yeah,
So they'd replant in the they just replant, make it like a farm instead of instead of an ecosystem. It would be just like a monoculture of one species of tree for paper.
yeah.
So
Like, but I've seen similar programs where they've got like, they try and have plant a plant, 1 for 1. So every one they chop down, they're going to plant one. But I'm just thinking in the time that it takes for it to grow, how many else are they going to chop down? Or maybe not even that. Even if they plant another one, the time that it takes years for these trees to grow to that height.
and
So like a
sometimes
generation.
the ecosystem would not even recover. For instance, if you go in to a watershed area and cut down all the trees, that raises the water table, and it can even turn an area into a swamp because there's not trees there to wick the moisture off of the land. So the water table would raise it, and there wouldn't be any way. Sure, you could go by the rules and go and plant a bunch of little trees. Like when they replanted the trees, it was like a specific distance apart, ideally for paper production. Okay, so you're not replacing the forest as it was. You're just, making another farm. Just for the paper. You're not restoring the land to its original state.
Yeah.
So what it's presented as is not really what it is.
Well, I mean, I've that got me to thinking of like what's that? Like generational growth of area, how we have to crop production. The land runs out of fertility, so you you have to plant in one area for say 1 season or 3 seasons, then you need to rest that area for any nutrient to be back in there for anything to grow, really. Anything.
It's like the corporations really own or really own things. It's not the country that owns things, right? I mean, there's also like another example is our government gave another huge piece of land to a French company for uranium mining. So they just go in and just, they mine the area and poison the area, poison the rivers and everything. And it's like the corporations think they own everything. It's not.
Yeah, a lot
It's
of
not
that. I
near.
think that line has been blurred, and because the corporate always think about the bottom line, not the end result, right? It's all about making profit. So people have been now over these past decades since the 80s and the boom of stocks and finance and things like this. Uh, they've been blinded and they've been thinking, it's like, no, the corporations can't do any wrong. But in
They tell you they're
actuality,
doing you a favor by bringing economy and jobs to the area but when all the resources dried up, the company goes and leaves behind a mess and no jobs.
yeah, that's right. Or they may bring those jobs, but there's always going to be a reaction. Like for every action, there's a reaction, and there's also going to be some side effects from, or not even like worse than side effects, I guess, like how the toxic waste runoff, that pouring that into the environment without people knowing. It's quite insane. I've heard quite a few. No, I don't know really research it too hard, but I've seen a few instances of major corporations just doing some huge major atrocities towards nature.
I was watching that. I don't know if you've ever watched that. Mike Morales. He goes on and he shows the satellite imagery of all the chemtrailing, and he's showing how all this chemtrailing and everything is controlling the weather. They're controlling when it rains, and he says they're doing all this geoengineering ahead of the fires and everything. Like all those fires in Australia are just like the directed energy weapons, burning cars and houses, but leaving the trees and calling it a forest fire. And the same thing's going on in Canada and the United States. And
it's good you said that too, bro, because now near the North Pole where that Arctic ice at, is melting, and Russia is trying to damn near claim all of that. So yeah, it is.
So how much? What is it? Will there be like usable land under the
Yeah,
ice
it's
melt?
usable. It's gonna be usable land. So Russia, and it's like Russia and Switzerland and like the United States, like they're all in like they having discussions and disagreements about who land it should really be. So now what Russia is doing is saying they go down to the bottom of the ocean, to the seafloor, and if that land still extends over there to the North Pole by the Arctic ice, they're gonna say that it's theirs. So they trying to use scientific evidence now to say it's theirs.
Wow.
yeah,
As a like
and
go ahead.
the official narrative is that Alaska used to belong to Russia, and United States purchased Alaska from Russia. I'm not sure when, 100 years ago or more.
I wouldn't even say 100 years. I don't even think it's been 100 years yet.
And that's part of the false narrative too, that there was a worldwide culture, and a lot of these buildings, even in town here, are old world buildings. I didn't even realize this a year ago. And then I went downtown and I say, yeah, these buildings, the colonists didn't build these buildings.
Mm.
What sort of structures are they? Like, who built it? If it wasn't built by
the society that they wiped out worldwide.
Okay, right.
That they're calling the Tartarians, but I have trouble with that too, because it was the same. If you look at some old maps about Russia, when Russia started out, Russia was a created, installed thing too. What they started out in Eastern Europe, and then everything east of that they called the Tartary. Right. And what that mean was just the territory that they haven't taken over yet. And that would be like with Alaska. It would have been part of the territory that the parasites hadn't taken over yet. The parasites that are, run Europe, that installed all the figureheads, the royalties.
Would you have any idea at what time that those Tartarian constructions would be in the Alaskan space? Like, what time period they would have been built?
Well, maybe. If you look at the mid 1800s, you can see there's the one John Levi channel. He goes over that about, and they're for example, they look at the populations, official population censuses, where he shows that, for example, they're saying that these people, they sent some colonists to Australia in the mid 1800s, and then they're showing all these underground railways and train tracks, and it's the same here in North America, that the colonists didn't build all these railroad tracks and everything and all these buildings, that they were already there, and the parasites just took everything over, and there was some kind of events that happened that wiped out all the trees and mud flooded everything. Like if you look at a lot of these stone buildings, like the legislative building, the main government building here in Manitoba, it's like a magnificent, incredible stonework, and we don't know how it was built, but it had to have been built with airships, because, and then if you look for photographs of when some of this old stuff was built, and the old photographs are doctored. The sky is all whited out, and there's mud everywhere, and it doesn't explain like how all this stone was quarried and moved. It doesn't make any sense. Like here in the 1800s, supposedly we were in ox carts when all this stuff was built, and this stuff wasn't built with ox carts.
It's like a phenomenon with how people are with how the pyramids got built. Like they kind of just don't know yet, or shit, might not never know.
Yeah, the regular people like us, the livestock, we don't know. We're not supposed to know.
Yeah.
if you start, questioning history,
I
then
heard the slaves don't agree. Yeah, I don't. it's hard for me to believe that slaves built that big ass, like, was able to even pull those big old bricks, and even how did you stack them, like, things like that. And I don't know, maybe a human couldn't have did this, or maybe they actually had some type of technology.
I'm going to put a couple of channels in the chat of some interesting channels. Like there's one, John Levi. He has a video called World War Zero, and it shows that there was actually black people here in North America, and they had great cities, and they came and took them over. And there was black people in Europe, black royalty in Europe, with the same thing. And
I just did
not
my
only
story
that,
on that.
white people in Africa also. So everyone was everywhere. This racist thing is only a couple 100 years old.
And look, like, I'm actually, like, I'm actually gonna do another video on, like, cause, like, people, like, black people always like to say, I understand, like, we've been through the most current slavery, but white people been enslaved also. So I'm gonna do a video on that too. So just so I can open everybody's eyes, like, it's just not no one race thing. Like, it didn't happen to everybody.
It's documented that the first slaves. It's documented that the first slaves that came to North America were Irish.
Yeah.
And they were cheaper than black slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And that the Civil War, was not what they tell us was. It was about taking over the land and separating people by color. That's what it was about.
True.
It wasn't about freeing the slaves. It was about separating the races. It's separating people by color. The whole official narrative is bullshit.
If your race been through slavery, then that means your race didn't have an agent, a sellout. They didn't had to go make some type of agreement or thought in a man from a structure standpoint that me enslaving these people is gonna benefit me. Like,
absolutely.
And people don't know the word when they say, like, Slavs and, like, history and stuff. Those were some of the first slaves. They got enslaved by their own people. The word Slav means slave.
Yeah, like that's a great point. I think for people that are interested in the where words are, the derivative of the word Slavic is derived from slave, or slave
Like,
is derived from Slavic. That's what I was going to say.
Yep. You looking it up right now?
No, I'm quite aware of that from before. I think it was I think Eastern Europeans, or maybe the Serbian region or around there.
Yep.
That's what I've been.
Because when I did my history on it, they looked at the Slavs in the area they in, like, they was like, this is like a dead ass area. It's always cold and things like that. So they kind of looked down upon them and made them slaves.
But Yeah, I think even when people, another good point I just may want to say is, I would think, because a lot of when people come up with the argument of, oh well, you know how there was the supposed Atlantic, African Atlantic slave trade, right? And you
Yeah,
know
transatlantic.
they would say that the Africans sold. You know, white people may say, "Oh, you know, don't you know that the Africans sold their own African brothers into the slavery?" But even that, coming from the same perspective of the Slavics at that time period, I think that because even today, like the people who were servants, they were treated at a different living standard. Like they were still fed, clothed, sheltered. Um, you know, not at the same extravagances of the Queen, but I think to a quite, you know, nice standard as opposed to the chattel slavery or cattle slavery, like, you know, and the whips, uh, barely eating any food, you know, one meal a day, no clothes, that sort of
See,
torture. You know, I really do believe that these, the, the time of the Slavic, you know, of that of or maybe you could advise me more, Godbody, like if you did the when
when
you
you're
did
you're
your
talking about
research,
when you're talking about
how was it
Slavic,
treated? Yeah.
when you're talking about Slavic, just an example, like I live in the southern part of the province, and when we say we're going up to work up north, that's what we say. We going to work up north, and we went out. We went to this one job, and we were actually building a casino on the native reserve, building a casino. So that, you know, and that was on the reserve where they signed a treaty, right? But I worked with some native fellows there, and they were non-treaty. See, they didn't sign away, so they don't get anything. It's like they're not even acknowledged as people almost, and they're actually very light-skinned. And they're native people, and they some of these native people, they have a written language, and it's called Slavic, and it is like that Russian kind of writing. And I don't know why or how they ended up with that kind of writing, where that came from. I haven't figured that out, and I think that's kind of odd. It just shows what the false history is.
And is that language or that writing is different from the Russians or anything that's around there?
Yeah, there's a couple of different languages. There's one language, it's like triangles and circles and stuff.
Damn.
Yeah,
So
and it's really,
so you know how people get colonized and they take over, you take like whichever one dominating you take over their language. So doesn't that kind of show like they all of them weren't colonized, or all of them wasn't made slaves, that they was able to still
yeah,
keep their language?
yeah, they still kept their language, yeah, and they still use it.
Damn. Yeah, you know,
And it's different
that's a phenomenon.
there. Yeah, and there's more. I think there's several types of written language in the northern parts of Canada that they still use. But one of my buddies at work, he's native, and his wife knows that language, and they call it Slavic. And it's something I didn't even know for a long, long time. That the real reality of what's happening is hidden from everybody. So, you know, that they have us separated. They have, you know, they have a so-called white people separated from the native people, so we don't understand each other. That's by design. You still there, Ray? You muted, son,
Yo,
Ray.
yo, yeah. Sorry, man. I've just got a few. Was on a couple other windows. I got got a few things that I'll probably cut off in a little bit in 5 minutes. Let's say it's going 1 hour 24. Go 90 minutes.
Yeah, cool. Cause I'm a I gotta do a little show too. I'm just I just go in on like shit that I just go on like in on facts. I go in like different terrorist groups and how religion influences things and shit like that. So, yeah.
Dope, man. That sounds cool.
Yeah,
Shit.
I just give you history on different terrorist groups. People come join in if you got any facts or things you want to discuss about it and shit like that. Come hop in.
Is
Fuck.
God Body
All
the
right.
name of your channel?
Yeah, it's God body. Like today, I'm talking about Boko Haram, ISIS, because it's you will see in the show now that guy got killed in Iran. He was part of the help that was keeping ISIS down. So now they gonna reemerge too, and I'm talking about Iran and things like that. So
Yeah, it's
Most
like they're
definitely.
they're done with them now. They used them for what they wanted, so they got rid of them.
yep, and I'm giving history on why. Like when Trump was like he been supposed to been dead. I'm giving history on why Trump says he been supposed to be dead and the things he did. The the acts he done committed that said why Trump said we supposed to been took him out.
Yeah, it's a lie.
Yep.
It's all going to a script.
Yep.
These things are.
Even like like Bin Laden, right? I didn't know. I just did my research on it. I didn't know we gave him guns to fight off the Soviet Union when they came in, and then we went. He turned into a terrorist, and then we went after him. So it's like, I'd be like, damn, this shit is crazy.
Yeah, well, the Bin Laden family and the Bush family are big friends.
And I had no idea of that.
Yeah, I think it's like George Bush used to call Osama bin Laden's dad uncle or something like that. So they were really close.
Mm-hmm. And then we pay him off $1 million in ransom, all type of crazy shit. Yeah, I'm gonna be going in on all that type of shit, man. But I love y'all channel. I'm gonna be on y'all shit, supporting y'all shit, sharing y'all shit too. Cause if it's about knowledge, I love it.
Yeah, check out that John Levi channel. It's quite fascinating.
I'm definitely am.
Like a lot of this stuff that we talk about and discuss, it's all discussing it from a false narrative point of view.
Oh.
And and that's tough. You're trying to find the truth within a false narrative, and yeah.
So you think you could find information on like it's called like the round table of men and things like that. Like they say these are the people like that control everything and got the script out there for us.
Yeah, it's
Like
like
they said it's called the round table of men and like the Bilderberg and
it's
things
like
like that.
in ancient times, Israel was not a place; it was a people,
Damn.
and,
So
and
it could have been mixed and everything, huh?
we're yeah, we're led to believe that yeah, it was a place in ancient times, but it was not.
Mhm.
And these people that call themselves Jews are not really Jews today.
Oh yeah, because they over there in Pakistan. Well,
Ain't they in tour with Pakistan over that land and stuff like that?
Yeah, Palestine.
Yeah, Palestine. My bad. I said Pakistan. Yeah, it was actually a black reporter who he voiced his opinion. Well, what he said he wanted Palestine to be free from the I think he said from the borders to the sea or like things like that, and that got him fired. They said that was like derogatory towards the Jews.
Yeah,
The nigga has lost his
yeah,
job.
yeah. We're not allowed to speak out against
What they call
people that are
people.
saying there's something they're not.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Well, actually, on that note, that I'll have to cut this off. Um, much gratitude both to you
All
guys
right.
coming on. Definitely going to like hook up if anyone out there, it's
All
like
right.
you want to come and hook up on God Body's new stream coming up a little bit later today. Uh,
Thank you, bro.
hit
Peace,
up on his
peace.
channel and get the info. And much peace to Ken. Much peace to everybody.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, guys.
Catch you up soon. Most
When are you going on, God Body?